My name's Stuart Aitken. I'm one of the directors and co-founder at Axis Animation and Axis Studios, who are based in Glasgow, which is in Scotland in the UK. Four of us started the company in about 1999, and since then we've grown to about 200 people. We've got studios in Glasgow and Bristol and London in the UK. We primarily do cinematics and trailers for video games, but we also do film-length feature animation, animation for TV, ride films, and commercials as well. I'm at SIGGRAPH. We thought it would be interesting to talk about our work on game cinematics in a sort of wider context. So we got together with a few of our competitors, I guess, in the industry and some of our clients. So there's us and Blur Studios from California, Digic Pictures from Hungary, Plattige Image from Poland, as well as Blizzard Games, Riot, and Bungie. And collectively, we're going to be talking about the past, present, and future of game cinematics, and going a little bit more in depth, I think talking about game cinematics as a kind of genre or style or kind of medium in its own right, and what defines that, and where that might go in the future, which is maybe the most interesting part of what we're going to talk about. What kind of things within that work has led to particular types of work that we see? Because although we do, I think we know within Axis we do quite a variety of different styles of work, and across all the studios we do different styles of work, but there's still, I think, common threads that link that kind of work stylistically and thematically. So we're going to talk a little bit about how all those things kind of came to be, and what define, if we're calling it a genre or a medium, what defines that medium or genre. And then I think we're going to talk about where that might lead to in the future, and particularly I think we're all at a point where the kind of work we do is seeing other avenues for it to stand on its own 2 feet. So rather than maybe doing trailers for games or cinematics for games, how might we be doing that style of animation, but maybe in its own right? How would we bring that kind of thing to the market? In terms of ourselves, I mean, we've actively been looking for ways to expand beyond the games sphere, but kind of keeping the same style of animation. Some examples of that, we worked on a couple of TV shows recently. One was a show called Kiss Me First, which was a collaboration between Channel 4 in the UK and Netflix. So that was a show, it was a live action drama. But the theme of the show was basically a bunch of kind of kids who were having problems who kind of met within this game world. So about a fifth of each show, roughly, was computer animation, which was actually set in this virtual world within the fiction of the story. So we did all the CG for that. So in each episode of the TV show, you'd have maybe like 45 minutes would be live action and 10 minutes would be CG. Another good example is we did a show in collaboration with Sci-Fi Channel recently called Happy, which was an adaptation of Grant Morrison graphic novel. Grant's from Scotland as well, so it was a natural tie-in there, and that consists of a kind of very bad ex-cop who has to find his missing daughter, who he didn't know he had, and he's helped along by an imaginary unicorn. It's a pretty mad show. It's quite violent, and there's a big juxtaposition between this kind of very gritty, violent world of the ex-cop and this kind of very, funnily enough, happy imaginary friend who helps him along the way. It's pretty kind of wacky and surreal. And those projects, that project particularly, I thought it's a visual effects job because we're putting CG creatures into a live action show, but it's much more of a kind of stylized animation type of thing as opposed to maybe traditional. We're not doing a dragon for Game of Thrones, but we're creating these much more kind of animated style characters. So that's been a great example of that particular show tied in quite well with our particular expertise and the type of work we do. So we're looking for kind of opportunities like that. We're also looking at things that we can maybe option or develop in our own right. So we've got several things we're looking at right now. Unfortunately, I can't talk too much more about specifics of things that we'd be pursuing ourselves as a studio in terms of our own IP going into the future. There's an interesting project which I think we can talk about in generalities. We'll be talking about this in the panel, where Blur of a project where a number of us, including most of the people on the panel, are working on parts of what they're doing. Again, I can't say too much more about that project, but it's very exciting. We're all looking forward to that coming out next year when we can talk more about what it is specifically. But I think we're at an interesting point where there's an opportunity to be more adventurous in terms of how animation is used in storytelling, that maybe goes beyond the traditional role it's had in the West of being very kind of family orientated. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We all love Pixar movies, but we also feel that animation can have a kind of wider storytelling role. We can tell more outrageous stories or more adventurous stories that aren't always child-friendly, for instance, and that's kind of okay. And we're kind of very interested in pursuing that kind of animation, and it ties in, I think, quite well with some of the stuff we do from games. It's often kind of more violent, or it's got more adult themes than maybe the traditional animated feature audience are kind of used to consuming. So I think there's this definitely feeling that maybe the time has come to see how animation in a more adventurous light for Western audiences. I think if you look at maybe Japan, that's been the case there for many years anyway. But we're definitely thinking that maybe this is the right moment in Western society for to be a kind of viable market, I guess, for kind of more adventurous styles of animation.